Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, the CG Zest Wellness community. Welcome to this webinar recording. And my name is Nathan Kolar from the CG Zest Wellness team. And it's honestly a pleasure delivering these webinars, conducting these recordings, and getting this type of health information out there through these digital platforms and really trying to help individuals gain habit today. And so we're going to go into this presentation. We're going to have some interactive audience questions that are asked that are really thought-provoking and help gain commitment and accountability from individuals, so that you're listening to this webinar, you're getting that health education part, but you're also aware of what are your next steps and how do you go really practical with things. So why are we all here today? We're here today to focus on the pillar of physical health, movement, physical activity, exercise, fitness. So that's in particular the health pillar we're talking about. And the title for this webinar is A Healthy 24 Hours. Make your whole day matter. And this exact phrasing is courtesy of the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, CSEP, which you'll see this webinar as we use a number of their resources to create this information, and albeit this evidence-based information. And so we're going to have a few intro slides here, share our agenda, and we're going to go into the webinar. So this is brought to you by CG Zest Wellness, and more than just myself, there's a whole team that makes up CG Zest Wellness, and it's an honor for myself to work with these individuals. And I happen to be giving this webinar today, but a number of our other webinars are from our other CG Zest Wellness team members who have their own health and wellness specialties and who deliver this type of information as well. And you can see some important links right here, whether it be the link to enroll in the CG Zest Wellness platform powered by Virgin Pulse, or even the link to enroll in our newsletter, because all of our wellness programming is then repeated in our newsletter, as far as sharing updates and debriefs from events and upcoming events and programming to look forward to. So again, I love delivering these webinars, and so thank you to CG and the CG Zest Wellness team. So our roadmap for today is categorized into 3 sections. We have our first section being hidden behavior, which we'll go into exactly what that means. We're then going to go into section 2, which is we're going to create our own exercise prescription, so getting really practical. And the third part is, we're learning a lot in section 1, we're learning even more in section 2. Let's make sure before we end this webinar, let's make sure we bring it all together. That way we're all on the same page. We know, okay, these are our streamlined steps moving forward. And again, we can just avoid too much confusion, ambiguity. So we want to bring everything together at the very end. So these are our 3 sections. What I also want to share with this webinar on this next slide is that everything that I'm going to present on here, which is courtesy of my personal training, education, as well as experience working with various individuals, is that, hey, I'm right there with you. So I'm myself, human being. I'm trying to maintain my healthy habits. As life has its ups and downs, and things come out of there outside of your control, and conditions change, and people change, and resources change, and so I'm right there with you. And so I'm my head's in the clouds, and I'm optimistic, but I'm in the dirt. I'm really living this, walking the talk, and therefore I think becoming really attuned to sometimes how difficult it can be, and life and lack of time, and how we can really realistically develop healthy habits. So this is an image right here of some of the equipment I use for my outdoor workouts. And so I'm right there with you. I'm also trying to be my best self, and then take what I have learned and uncovered myself, and also teach you, and then you can teach that to a loved one. We have this domino effect of really supporting each other. So I'm right there with you, and I think it's super important to be realistic like that when you're talking about this type of health information and getting practical with acting on that health information. Here we go, section 1, hidden behavior of this webinar here. When we take a step back for a moment, when we look at society, we have cars, we have telephones and cell phones, smartphones, and we have refrigerators. And so over the course of time, these tools and products give us a tremendous amount of convenience in our daily lives, where we can go to point A to point B in the car. We can call someone and cover large distances. We don't have to just go there in person and talk to someone across the world. We can keep our food cold in the refrigerators. And so all these different types of things have made our lives incredibly effective and efficient in some sense, in many senses. But the one sense that maybe could be a trade-off or a con of things like this is that they might result in us taking less steps in our day, and therefore maybe being less physically active in our day. So before these types of inventions and products, we would have maybe had to walk more to go see someone, to go to work, to do a certain type of chore, to obtain our food. And so instead, we can sometimes do these activities by sitting down. As we kind of plant these seeds, is that this hidden behavior is sedentary behavior. And so the big take-home point here is that it's not just about physical activity, it's not just about exercise here, exercise there, but it's also how much sedentary behavior are we engaging in. You can see on the screen here the exact definition for sedentary behavior that we're using is sedentary behavior is characterized by low heart rate, slow breathing, and unloaded or unweighted muscles. And so not only is it about, okay, am I physically active? Am I going to the gym? Am I engaging in different sports and movement? It's also, okay, I need to minimize my sedentary behavior throughout the day. And the reason this is important is because a number of research studies and research have been finding there in the last point on the slide that even if someone is very physically active, they have their scheduled gym sessions, they still have to be mindful of their sedentary behavior. You can be very physically active, but if you're also sitting for extended periods of time the rest of the day, this can actually have a negative influence on your metabolism. And so on the graph on this slide, you want to be a breaker. Think of yourself as a breaker. So, you're sitting and that's totally fine. Many desk jobs you're sitting, but the point is that every once in a while, and we'll go into this more, every once in a while you get up, whether it be to fill up your water, to go to the washroom, to go chat with a colleague, to just go for a walk at lunchtime, at break time, but you want to break up your sedentary time. And it's this hidden behavior that can really be causing some adverse health outcomes for individuals. And so the idea of, okay, there's physical activity, but it's not just that half an hour or hour of the day I do it. There's a bigger picture. There's more going on here in terms of overall health. So instead of just looking at our day as that 1 hour, we need to look at our day as that 24 hours. And it's this type of thinking that the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology developed the 24-hour movement guidelines. I know for myself, when I first saw this kind of big picture view on a healthy lifestyle and being your best self and health and wellness, I thought, whoa, this makes so much sense. It's about that being physically active, but that sleep part. And you can see just by the image here how it gets across the idea of each of these activities take time and how much time sleep requires. And sweat's a part of it, but also sleep is a massive part of it. So for these 4 pillars of sweat, step, sleep, and sit, these are the 4 pillars of the 24-hour movement guidelines. And we'll start with sweat here. So if you're looking for exact numbers as far as how much physical activity should you go for in a day, in a week, the guideline is 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. As the webinar goes on, we'll define what moderate to vigorous means. But 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week, and then strength training or resistance training on about 2 of those days per week. That's sweat. We also want to step, right? And that is as simple as some light physical activities like standing, like gardening, like walking the dog, like playing with kids. These activities that even can be done at home as well. These matter as well. Sleep, numbers, 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep per night. That's 7 to 9 hours, followed by the last one, sit. And this is the idea on the previous slide about sedentary behavior. So we want to keep this one the lowest. And you see the guideline here, so try to have no more of 3 hours of recreational screen time, breaking up long periods of sitting as much as possible, and then in general, trying to, as best we can, have 8 hours or less of sedentary time. No, it's not about overnight changing your whole entire life and doing this and doing that and being like, oh, did I get 150 minutes? Oh, if I didn't, oh, I know I have to reevaluate. No, it's if you progress towards any of these pillars, make even the smallest bit of progress, you can see in the rectangular box here that evidence suggests that progressing towards any of these targets will result in some health benefits. And we know that when we have some health benefits, and those some health benefits are consistent over time, they then build up and build up and build up to positive health outcomes. And so that's important as far as like maintaining motivation over time and keeping our eye on the big picture, being, hey, it's not about perfection, it's about progressing over time, small here, small here, small here, and that is what matters, and evidence has suggested that it does indeed matter on a level of evidence and science. So I think a nice big picture view of a healthy 24 hours physical activity, moderate to vigorous steps and light physical activity, sleep, and behavior or our sitting time. The last one being that hidden behavior. This next slide, we'll talk about sleep, especially for our audience here, as far as the CG Zest Wellness community, because within the CG Zest Wellness platform, powered by Virgin Pulse, which you are all eligible to enroll in, we have a number of tools for the pillar of sleep. So in addition to the sleep guide, which we've talked about on prior webinars, we have different sleep healthy habits that are available. The Journeys feature, the digital health coaching feature of Journeys, has different sleep options too. And then lastly, even the Will feature, this mindfulness tool within the platform, also can serve as a tool for, as a practice for sleep. And if we break sleep down, it can be even a phrase like sleep hygiene. And so we have the duration of sleep, which we talked about, 7 to 9 hours. We have the timing of the sleep, which is being consistent in the weekdays and also the weekends of when going to bed and when waking up. And the quality of our sleep, so duration, timing, quality, with quality being, okay, what is the routines before bed, electronics, blue light, sound, lighting. And so it's these things we really want to be aware of that can impact our sleep, and we can consider them as sleep hygiene. So this is some awareness on this slide about what's available through the CG Zest Wellness platform, powered by Virgin Pulse. Okay, so we're going to get to a really cool slide next, because in order to know where we want to go, we have to kind of know where are we now? What's our baseline? Where are we starting from? And so here's a questionnaire that was drafted by, again, the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, called the PASBQ, the Physical Activity and Sedentary Behavior Questionnaire. The whole point of this questionnaire is for someone to find out their health benefit rating. When they can find out their health benefit rating, they know where they're starting from, and they can make the most realistic but yet sustainable plan for themselves to improve over time. And so what's neat about this questionnaire is that it asks questions about, okay, so historically or within recent past, here are some questions about your aerobic physical activity. So whether it be going for bike rides, runs, jogging, different types of sports as well. So it's looking at your aerobic physical activity patterns, your muscle strengthening or your resistance training patterns, so kind of lifting weights and heavy objects, or objects in general, and objects that offer resistance. You have your own perceived aerobic fitness, that self-reported aspect, and then again, that hidden behavior, that sedentary behavior. It's asking questions about that. So when individuals go through this questionnaire, which you can reach out to us at the CG Zest Wellness team, we can share this questionnaire with you, or you can also zoom into the screen here and look at each of these questions. You then can find for yourself, what is your health benefit rating? So again, keep in mind that health benefit rating, because when we go back to the prescription in a few moments, or we go to the prescription in a few moments, that's going to come in handy to know, again, where are we starting from? Because like I mentioned, in order to know where we're going and where we want to be, it makes sense to know where are we now, where are we starting from right now, and we create our plan from there. Especially when it comes to exercise and being physically active and increasing our heart rate and being mindful of blood pressure and just overall safety. So, here's a practical slide. We're finding out our score through the PASBQ. What is our health benefit rating based on our physical activity patterns, as well as our sedentary behavior and muscle strengthening patterns? How do we feel about ourselves, our own perceived fitness? And that's one thing. And even another side of the coin is also, when we create a plan, what do we prefer? What are our needs? What are our wants? What are even our barriers to being physically active? And there are no right answers to these types of things by any means, but when individuals go through these types of exercises, they become more mindful of, okay, I think I'm bringing awareness to something. And when they can bring awareness to something, maybe they're that much more likely to manage something over time. So it's really trying to take what's implicit and make it explicit, and then build a plan around that, because the conditions for each individual are unique. And so yes, whether it be this inventory of lifestyle needs and physical activity preferences, or whether it be looking at your own barriers to physical activity, it's becoming aware of these, and then we're building a plan. We can then manage these. Above all, from this slide, here's a really neat kind of to the point scoring system you can have for yourself. Is that when you're looking at the 24-hour movement guidelines and you're thinking about making changes, you could do this, you could do that, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, you can think to yourself and ask yourself these 3 questions. When you're doing something, did you enjoy it? Was it convenient? Fit into your schedule more regularly? You can score yourself 1 to 3. In this context, if your score is 6 or above, that's you're in a good place right now. If it's not, another option might be more viable. So it's perhaps it's simplifying things, but when we can do that, we can then clarify things and really make that path for ourselves moving forward. So here's again a slide that this is all about you and becoming aware of your needs, your wants, your preferences, what works for you, and even like, hey, we can even add some little scoring to this. Did I enjoy it? Was it convenient? Could I integrate it into my life and my schedule? So I think that's super important for individuals to be aware of when we're trying to be our best selves. Okay. We introduced the hidden behavior, sedentary behavior, sitting, the 24-hour movement guidelines. We mentioned the idea about what's available to all of you through the CG Zest Wellness platform and the sleep pillar. We then talked about the PASBQ. We talked about what's on the slide right now, needs, wants, barriers, and a little bit of scoring system. So just as a kind of spontaneous question for everyone to get that idea of a public commitment going and help with that accountability, if you were to pick one of these four pillars to improve on, whether it be for yourself or even supporting a loved one to improve, which one would you pick? Or which one would you like to pick for them? Or which one do you think they would pick? So I'll leave this on the screen for a few moments here. I'm going to take a drink of my water, and you can decide for yourself. Would you pick sweat, step, sleep, or sit? Okay, so there's again no right answers, but there is your answer. And so when we look at a healthy 24 hours and making your whole day matter, this is what it's all about. These four pillars, and for ourselves, there might be one in particular that we want to improve on most and that we're most eager to improve on. Okay, so section number 2, our exercise prescription, where we're getting very, very practical. The acronym we're going to use in this section is FIT, F-I-T-T, frequency, intensity, type, and time. So frequency, intensity, type, time, when we're building our own exercise prescription. Frequency. Frequency as well as intensity, type, and time can all be broken down into two parts of training or exercising. Aerobic training and resistance training. Aerobic training, again, walking, jogging, running, sports, kind of when someone says, okay, I'm working on my cardio right now, cardiorespiratory fitness, aerobic training. Resistance training being the idea of lifting objects, weights, using certain types of equipment. That would be considered resistance training. So two different types of training, and both with their different nuances as far as creating a plan or a prescription. Aerobic training for frequency, it's okay, how many times am I doing this per week for aerobic training? Resistance training, same can be said, how many times am I resistance training per week? But we can actually break it down when we're resistance training into, okay, how many actually resistance training exercises are we doing in particular? From that, how many sets of each exercise? Within each set, how many repetitions are we doing? Are we doing this one movement in 3 sets and 10 times each set, in total being 30 repetitions? Even if we wanted to make something more intense, what we can do is simply shorten the rest between different intervals. So doing things faster. That's also a means to resistance training and think, okay, how many times are we doing this per week? Same thing with set structure. The number of sessions we do per week can be even divided into, okay, is the set structure going to be like this one day or like this another day? And so that's something we also want to think about. Are we doing a type of circuit training and do a number of different almost stations and exercises? Are we building up with a certain exercise in the weights and changing the repetitions, or are we going down? So a pyramid training in that fashion. Or are we just simply going, okay, I'm going to do something, I'm going to move my leg this way with this piece of equipment, I'm just going to do it 10 times, and then boom, I'm good. So we're going to keep it as a straight set structure. So frequency, all in all, how often am I doing it per week? Now, when we get to the next one, intensity, it gets interesting. And so I'm going to break this slide down, and the whole slide here, this one's aerobic training, and the next slide is all about the resistance training. So exercise prescription, the intensity part of it. Everyone who's listening, the first thing you might want to do right now is calculate what the maximum rate. And there's an equation for that. It's called the Tanaka equation. And you can see the equation in the pink box right here. And so for some exact numbers, if someone is age 35, their max heart rate would be about 184 beats per minute. So you can see the variable that you have to put into that equation would be your own age, and then that equation equals your heart rate max. The reason that this is valuable and insightful and useful is that once you have your maximum heart rate, it's easier for you then to determine, okay, how hard am I working at any given moment based on what is the heart rate in that moment versus your heart rate max. You decrease that distance between what is your heart rate in the current moment and your heart rate max, and you know for yourself, okay, I'm working my body harder. So one intensity is think, okay, here's my heart rate max. If I want to be at a moderate intensity, I'm going to do about between 64 to 76% of my heart rate max. So if I have, let's say I have an Apple Watch and I'm jogging right now and I'm tracking my heart rate, I want to see, okay, if I know my heart rate max and I want to be around the 70% of my heart rate max, I'm going to be running and checking, okay, am I at 70%? I'm looking for that golden number of 70% for that heart rate max. You know you're at a moderate intensity. You can tell someone and track for yourself, okay, today I'm doing this exercise at a moderate intensity. Whereas other days might be more lighter, might be more vigorous. And so actually knowing the numbers, you can be more accurate in that sense. So that's one way to determine your intensity is by thinking about your heart rate and the idea of heart rate max and percentages of heart rate max. The next couple ways are more practical and as far as determining intensity. So what you want to do for the first one, and one option of three here, is knowing your RPE, your rating of perceived exertion. And so the image on the slide here with that scale, it's called a Borg scale. And it goes from 6 to 20, not 1 to 10, 6 to 20. And so when you're engaging in an activity, you can judge yourself and think, okay, how hard am I working on a scale of 6 to 20? If you think to yourself, okay, I think that was about a 13, or I feel like I'm at a somewhat hard, or yeah, that 13, you know it's somewhat hard. Versus if you think to yourself, oh, you know that was, I feel like a 19 and a 20 right now. You know you're working at a very, very hard intensity. So keep in mind between 6 to 20 is an evidence-based scale for judging your intensity, with that 13 being somewhat hard, going higher than 13, you know, getting to very hard, very, very hard, lower than somewhat hard, getting to more that light physical activity. Even a talk test when you're engaging in physical activity. So if you're engaging in physical activity and then you think to yourself, okay, you know, I can still talk to someone right now, and you know, even if you're jogging with someone and we're still having short sentences together, you can then think to yourself, okay, if I can still string these sentences together, I'm at this like moderate intensity. But if I can't even talk right now, and then you know, okay, I'm most likely at a vigorous intensity. So that's another way to think about the intensity of the physical activity. And then lastly, you can think of physical activity as something called a MET, a metabolic equivalent. And so you can see on the screen right here, if it's less than 3 METs, you know that it's a moderate or light physical activity. Between 3 to 6, more moderate, and then above 6 METs will be a vigorous physical activity. So even if you do an internet search about activities and METs, each activity has an average MET for it. And so I'm going to go, just looking at a resource right now beside my computer, I'm going to share some METs for some at-home activities and then different even exercises. So someone's sweeping the carpet, they have a MET of about 3.3. Gardening is a MET of 4, so between that moderate, or in that moderate intensity range. Playing with the dog is about a 4, MET of 4. Washing the car is associated with 4.5 METs. Playing with kids, 5 METs, and then moving furniture, 6 METs. So again, even these are all at-home activities with different METs associated with them, and they're all still considered physical activity. As far as formal exercise goes, you know, an intro Pilates class is associated with 3.5 METs. Walking, about 5 METs. weightlifting, 6 METs, swimming, 8 METs, a boot camp kind of style, 8 METs, and then running being 11 METs. And so these metabolic equivalents and burning energy and oxygen consumption, you can see that's what these metabolic equivalents are reflective of. So with this slide, you can judge intensity based on looking at your maximum heart rate and percentages, or the RPE scale, or the talk test, or keeping in mind different METs for different physical activities. That's for aerobic. We also have the flip side of it for intensity being resistance training. And so I love these charts here, because if you are moving a weight or moving an object and you've done it, let's say 5 times, and then you reached your, okay, I can't do it anymore, or you've done it once and you think, okay, I'm tapped out, I'm done, or you do it 10 times. Let's say for 10, you know that you're about at 75% of your 1 RM, your 1 repetition maximum. So if you can do something only once, lift it only once, move it only once, you know you're at your 100% RM, that's your maximum. You do something 5 times, you know you're at 87% 1 RM. And then this percent 1 RM, just kind of like percent heart rate, translates into your and so if I move something 7 times and engage with the movement 7 times, you can consider I've been able to accomplish that. That percent 1 RM is about 83, which is at the upper end of that hard range of effort, that hard intensity. So if I want to do a lighter day resistance training, I am going to be doing a lower weight with more repetitions. And then we can also look at our percentages, and even individuals can do some math with it as well behind the scenes if they'd like. Whereas, of course, if I wanted to be working at a very hard intensity, I want to be as close to a 1 RM as possible. So that higher weight, lower repetitions. And again, at the same time, the Borg scale is always relevant. That's 6 to 20. How hard am I working right now? From 6 to 20, and then judging your intensity that way. So that's the I in fit. So frequency, intensity, and the first T here is the type. So again, aerobic training. It can be surely a continuous training style where we're going to go for a run and do our time and complete the distance, or it could be interval training, you know, especially if we're on a spin bike, we go hard for 5 minutes, or sorry, I should say hard for a minute, easy for 2 minutes, hard for 30 seconds, easy for a minute, and then going through these different intervals of training between how much effort we're putting in and then recovery. And that would be a single exercise session. You can see along the screen here is also examples of aerobic training activities. So the type of aerobic training, just like there's the type of resistance training as well. When we do resistance training, are we working our whole body, our upper body, the midsection of our body, our lower body, the legs, the anterior part of our body, the front part of our body, the chest? Are we working the posterior part of the body, the back? And so there's these different options we can have for resistance training. Are we doing a full body resistance training session? Are we doing, okay, today's upper body only, and the next day that we engage with resistance training will be lower body only? You know, are we doing it a couple days on, a couple days off? Are we doing it one body part per day and isolating our muscles in that sense? Or it's just a chest day, just a back day, just a leg day? And so different options you can have for the type of resistance training, being the alternative splits, the body part per day, being with someone who's more advanced in training, and then a full body routine, keeping things more simple, being for someone who's a beginner to resistance training. And again, it's resistance training in terms of lifting weights, lifting objects, but also using body weight, whether it be push-ups or planks or body weight squats, or even it might be resistance bands and doing work like that. So anytime there's resistance being applied to the body, so it's not just about grabbing something and moving it, pushing it, pulling it, but anytime we can have our body fighting gravity, that's what resistance training is all about. And even sometimes things like resistance bands make fighting gravity that much more difficult, and therefore engaging different muscle fibers in your body to do so. So that's type. Next, we have the last T in fit, frequency, intensity, type, time. And so time is the most straightforward of them to explain, and it's the overall duration of the respective exercise session. And so, okay, is it 10 minutes? Is it a half hour? Is it 1 hour? What is the overall beginning to end time? So frequency, intensity, type, time. And in the next section, we're going to go into now bringing it all together, because we have all these acronyms, and we, like I mentioned, you could do intensity this way and frequency this way, and things can be all over the place. But this is what the last section is all about: is how do we put it all together and create what's best for us. Okay, so section 3, bringing it all together. We have a summary of properties, and you can see the first column here, like we chatted about earlier, is what is our health benefit rating? Are we kind of in the more beginner stages, or are we in the latter, more experienced and advanced stages? So is our health benefit rating, is it poor or fair, or is it good, very good, or excellent? And we can divide those two into the two main categories, because each category is going to have different goals, and then with different goals comes different plans. And so you can see for the fair, the poor or fair health benefit rating, we have our fit prescription for aerobic training right there. So you can see, okay, how often are we doing this? The intensity being, okay, what intensity are we going to pick? Type, was it the continuous one? Was it the interval one? And then time, and how can we fit that into our schedule as far as time management? And even resistance training for someone who's early in these stages and their health benefit rating is poor or fair. Resistance training is, okay, try it, but let's not focus too much on it. It's okay if it happens once in a while. The main part is you have your mind on it. It doesn't maybe indeed happen once in a while, and then we can build upon that. But it's not something, again, with these types of creating a prescription for yourself, is nothing has to be written in stone. It's not you have to do this, you have to do that. It's let's start realistic, let's be safe, let's see what your needs and preferences are and build around that. So we have the health benefit rating for a poor or fair individual in terms of their questionnaire responses and creating an appropriate prescription from that questionnaire. And then again, we have someone who's good, very good, or excellent from their health benefit rating. They're more advanced in training. You can see that when we look at aerobic training and you go fit, you can see their frequency differs as well. You can see it's about this idea of more and longer and quicker as far as minimizing rest times between sessions as well. The intensity goes up. We want to be moderate to vigorous, and we can look at how are we doing that based on our heart rate, our rating of perceived exertion, or even the talk test, or looking at different activities. Think, okay, I'm going to do this activity because this activity has this many METs associated with it, and picking activities based on the METs. And so, yes, different than someone who's a beginner, as well as, okay, the type of activity and then the time of activity. For the most part, being the general trend being, okay, if someone's more advanced, they're going to have a longer duration associated with their training. And then for resistance training, with someone who's creating a prescription for themselves, who's more advanced and have that good, very good, or excellent health benefit rating, they do want to incorporate resistance training, at least that which is recommended in the guidelines, that at least 2 days per week, whether it be using machines, free weights, whether it be days that are isolating a certain body part, or split routine, being your upper body on one day and your lower body on another. These are the type of options that can come about, but it's that general idea of 2 days per week or more. So that's how we can put everything together and really create a prescription for ourselves using that frequency, intensity, type, time acronym. And almost like a nice play on words. And there's a movement about this. This is exercise is medicine. Exercise as medicine. This is what it's all about. And you'll kind of notice so far, as we just kind of pause briefly here, so far we're talking at the individual level. We're talking about you or your loved ones. How do we create a prescription for yourselves and your own sedentary behavior and your own needs and your own preferences, and your own scoring with a questionnaire? So kind of at that individual level. When we were creating this webinar, thought, okay, what if we also include some subject matter on still the idea of bringing it all together, but let's say at that employer level or the organizational level, especially for a number of our CG Zest Wellness members who work for organizations. And what if they like hearing this, it resonates with them, and they also want to bring this to individuals they work with and create a healthy, happy workplace as well. And so we have a resource right here, which kind of shows a sneak peek, is that some organizations that we work with create a physical activity at work policy. And so by creating a policy, by thinking about and taking a systemic approach to physical activity in the workplace, managing expectations and making sure everyone's on the same page, overall creating the conditions to allow for physical activity and for individuals to indeed make their whole day matter and actually have that healthy 24 hours, is they can indeed, organizations adopt a physical activity at work policy. And so that's what's on the screen right now. And whether it be companies who use a same template like this, or they make their own template, this serves just as ideas, but it's about, okay, we're basing this on evidence-based practices such as the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology. We're really thinking about, okay, what does this mean to us? What are we committing to? And the way we help employees to do this in their work days is we're going to make it really evident how we do this. Whether it be not just resources and time, but also are we incentivizing employees in recognizing their hard work? Are we asking employees what they want and getting their own input as well, and surveying employees for physical activity at work? So that was our thinking in terms of what's something to share at the employer or organizational level. We have healthy people, but also healthy workplaces, and then that much more closer to healthy communities and healthy countries. So from people to workplaces, countries is the goal. That's how this can be so much bigger than ourselves. Okay, here comes another audience poll question. And again, I'm going to leave this one on the slide for a few moments. And this one's actually a question for all of you. And so how can we continue this conversation? We're talking about a different approach and perspective to being physically active. We're acting on new research. And so what do you think is key to continuing this conversation and getting this information out there and really changing individuals' lives through this physical activity perspective? And so you have a number of options here, 4 options, as well as option E for other. There's no correct answer to this, but myself and the CG Zest Wellness team would love to learn from your responses and take in your input as well and hear your feedback and see your feedback. So I'm going to leave this slide on the screen here for a few moments. I'm going to take a drink of my water, and then we can close off this webinar recording. But think about it. Think, what what will it take to continue this conversation? Do any of the responses in this poll resonate with you? Yeah, it's one of those things. Is it, do we create more content and educational resources, or is it about mobilizing people and engaging different stakeholders? Is it, no, there's a, we're human beings, psychology, and why do we do what we do, and understand decision making? Is that we need more resources in the workplace, outside of the workplaces? Is it a combination? Is it something else? Is it one of these in particular? That's the question moving forward, and certainly as that's what our CG Zest Wellness team thinks about when we're trying to serve you and the communities that we work in. And here's our final slide. And for myself, Nathan Kolar from the CG Zest Wellness team, it's refreshing to learn about this content and look at evidence-based resources, taking things from our own personal lives and how we're right there with you, and how we can develop healthy habits and go through the changes of life, but still be our best selves. And then in doing so, contribute to our workplaces and be the best also employees we can be, and engage and create healthy workplace cultures. And so this concludes another webinar recording of ours. You can see all of our number of other digital marketing resources here, whether it be social media, email newsletters, our podcast, our blog. These are all types of content mediums that we engage with, update, and deliver for all of you. So that said, this concludes the webinar for this recording, which is all about a healthy 24 hours. Make your whole day matter. Thank you very, very much for your time and attention. And above all, this is about you creating your own effective and safe exercise prescription. Thank you.